I made the decision personally to not come out unless I had a reason to come out, like a girlfriend or no, just like a girlfriend.
Yeah.
And so at 16, I had my first girlfriend, and that was very short lived because it was high school. But I came out to my mom, who her direct words were, you like boys too much. So I was like,
I came out when I was in the 12th grade to my father. I was out to my friends at high school from grade 11, which is when I first dated a woman, or anyone for that matter.
Not really. I didn't really know that I wanted to do it until more recently. Like, I always felt kind of uncomfortable in my body and the way people perceived me, but I wasn't really clear on some of the underlying causes for that. And
I did, actually. I did not come out until I was in grade 7, though. Not because I didn't know I was bisexual, but because I didn't think it was something you had to come out as. Somehow I missed the memo, and I thought everyone liked girls and boys, because why not? They're all so attractive. And it wasn't until, like, junior high that I was like, hang on, wait, some people are just attracted to one? And then I realized that I had to, be like, I'm attracted to both guys.
And it kind of felt like being alienated, I suppose. But eventually, as like momentum grew and more people came out, it felt better.
Came out to my father, which I was very nervous about, being from Alberta and, having a traditionally manly man father who was into hunting and made, remarks offhand about gay people that were not always very flattering.
it was really interesting because on the one hand, we're going into religion classes being like, oh, it's, homosexuality is fine as long as you don't act on it. And then half an hour later, you were walking into the choir classroom where the worst kept secret in the entire school was that the choir director was gay and living with his partner. So it was this weird mix of it's totally fine, but God says no.
It's only been, like, trickier with my parents. Like, when I came out to my mother, she was like, oh, you're just greedy. So then now I've kind of been like, I'm gonna tell my dad if it ever becomes relevant, and not before. But in terms of, like, peers and stuff, it's been really good.
It's definitely easier to come out to, like, my peers and my friends at school. It was very much acceptable to be gay at my school. There were a number of very overtly queer guys, especially. It was very much a non-issue with teachers and with friends. So it was considered fairly normal. There was a culture of social justice and a general education about queer issues at my school.
No, not diagnosis. I mean, addiction, but it's undiagnosed.
How was that? How was
It was probably consequential of like just my parents having done the same kind of drugs. So, and access, because my parents were doing the same kind of drugs. So, like, I don't know how to really describe it other than like it felt right at the time. Like it felt like a kind of community that I was probably looking for, I suppose.
I do know I went through some pretty severe bouts of depression. It was as simple as taking a look at, from 1 year I went from being a straight A student to C's and D's consistently.
I was diagnosed with anxiety when I was probably diagnosed when I was about 16, especially in high school. I had a lot of anxiety about, once I started dating a woman, about my mother finding out especially, but also just about my dad finding out. I had a lot of anxiety about figuring out intimacy and relationships because yeah, there didn't seem to be a lot of models for me to follow. And yeah, especially being in the closet is super anxiety causing.
No.
There were no resources. Again, Catholic school, it's kind of, even if you were gay, don't do anything about it because you'll go to hell.
It certainly wasn't like talked about. I mean, I grew up in Abbotsford, which is like the Bible Belt of Canada, right?
It's only when I got to university that there was actually like a pride organization, and that I tried to get involved in that, but then it was kind of this weird dynamic of, because I was just bisexual, like I wasn't quite queer enough.
Where you grew up. Tell us a bit about being queer in Nanaimo.
Being
How about
queer
that?
in Nanaimo. Not fun. Not fun. I was definitely like targeted quite a few times. I wasn't the most blendy in person.
Like, the thing I regret most is just that I didn't have an experience sooner that led me to realize that transitioning was like the most important thing for me to be happy. Like, that would have saved so much trouble if I had just known that it was an option. But I kind of went through all of high school without that knowledge, and it kind of sucks in retrospect. I mean, I'm happy I'm transitioning now because I have more confidence and kind of the tools to deal with any kind of negative reaction from people. Like, I just honey badger that shit.
It sucked, and there were no services that I like. There was the only service I could even think of was like just for youth, and that was like the only service for any kind of youth. Period. Never mind like a specific kind of youth. So it was not good. But it, yeah, as a kid, it was shitty. It was shitty. It got better when I was older, but as like pre anything 18, it sucked balls.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the hell's going on with my body? I don't consent to this.
It was a bit of a source of angst, and I think that's why when we lived together, actually, I went through that period of, what label am I? Before finally being like, fuck it, I cannot figure this out. And so it's only recently, I'd say, I'd really kind of come to peace with the fact that I am weird. I really can't be put into a box. And
I mean, I had this kind of like wishy-washy, like wallflower personality. I wasn't really, like, the only times I really felt like myself was if I was doing like kind of performing. Like, I could be somebody more extroverted, or I could wear like a really frilly scarf or something, but it's okay because it was like Jimi Hendrix or something, and I could like play the guitar and kind of dance around like I kind of wanted to, and could start blurring lines of like what guys do and what girls do, and I still do that because like people can do whatever. I just felt that, again, like it would be nice to, would have been nice for my identity to develop sooner if I just had more information and more exposure to the possibilities.
Point in anything. I even remember like hanging out, having sleepovers with my best friend, talking about how there's going to be no place for us in the world. And when you're coming off crystal meth thinking about shit like that, oh, the world sucks. But it didn't help for like a long time, until one day it did. And it suddenly like there was this entire alternative community to the one that I had been exposed to, that it was like instantly accepted into. And it just like extended past my entire city, and it was just like this networking of people all throughout the island where I am from. And it worked out really well, but it took a long time, and I wouldn't have believed it if anyone had told me ahead of time.
For me, I mean, I kind of did like an awkward, nerdy guy growing up, and it just really kind of screwed with my relationships with other people, I think, mostly. Like, I never felt like being the man in the relationship or even going out and seeking a relationship because I was never really happy with myself. And so the only relationships I really had were if people came and like sought me out and like persisted. That's kind of sad that I kind of missed out on having some good like choice relationships. But
I'd like counselors of queer youth to, yeah, kind of be aware that although a lot of queer youth have anxiety, it's not necessarily like clinical anxiety in the sense of anxiety that is unrelated to, you know, just their outside circumstances.
Nothing, I guess, because I just had to go through it, so that would be all that they could really do was like just understand the person has to go through certain processes on their own. And that there's really no right or wrong, it's just what they need to do sometimes. I mean, that's not always the specific situation, but I think it is how it plays out a lot.
Try to realize they may not understand experiences, because as a counselor, you know, you're still coming from this place of you're an adult with a fully formed brain and not everything is the end of the world the way it is for when you're a teenager. So just trying to be understanding of that and understanding, keeping up with the fact that, you know, our experiences as queer youth don't necessarily mean that it's going to be similar for queer youth today because the world is still always changing.
It's not a phase. Even if it is a phase, it's a natural part of growing up.
just information, just like lots of information and making sure that I'm making up my own mind about things and not just trying to convince me either way.
The pain and the intensity that kids are feeling is very real, and I would love if counselors realized that the most practical thing to do is to give them tools to function and cope.
Anxiety is a perfectly normal response to a really stressful situation that is being afraid for your safety, worried that your family will reject you and kick you out. You might be living on the street, you don't know how you're gonna pay for school, like, yeah, so being cognizant of the fact that a diagnosis is not kind of the end of it.
I call my clients